All right, good morning. Everybody had a great day off. So I titled YouTube this morning, "Failure Isn't an Option." Because if it fails, it'll have to be pretty ugly. But anyway, not surprising to see a little selling here this morning. So last week, we all know Thursday and Friday was a bit of a blast off there with the Fed FOMC minutes out of the way on Wednesday, which wasn't much of a reaction. And then the rest of the news, which was, I guess, baked into the cake, had this move higher. And so with all moves, we look at our market internals, and there was good confirmation of breadth. Actually, it's the highest move there in a long, long time. Well, got above that McGraw, that 41.35 on Friday, I believe. But we'll take a look at it. That was good information. I know it stalled there for a while. Hold on. So with the internals here, the good thing is that sentiment isn't already at an extreme. And not that these turn on a dime ever. They rarely do. But at least it's got room to here. And this coming up here just means there was broad market participation. So getting above here gives us an initial caution. Everything's moved a bit too far, too fast. And this, option traders still being skeptical. One of the things I mentioned was that this was rising. And honestly, I didn't really pay enough attention to it, as this was going down, that this was improving, because I tend to think, because historically it's true, at extremes, option traders tend to be on the wrong side. But this was kind of, I thought maybe it would come down one more time, but it didn't. Anyway, so now internals aren't aligned yet to tell us be careful, potentially get out of the way for a while. Things are down a little bit, as you can see here. And this, 50 MA and these pivots are an obvious destination point. Now, one of the concerns was, we come into the market today and this just shoots straight up, which would lead to a bigger period of probably doing nothing, chopping around and pulling back and what have you. So we've got a little distance here for the sentiment to go up there. There's distance to this first resistance area before it gets there. And we'll take a look at where things are at. Now, you said 41.35, right, which is down here. So that what McGraw, so those of you in YouTubers, what McGraw is telling me, that JP Morgan had a hedge on at that number and could drive prices higher and could be a ceiling. So when it was under it on Friday, we looked at that as, okay, that's good information. There's nothing to the left here as far as any price resistance, but these hedges tend to be ceilings and sometimes floors. So we'll see. Now, we look at a number like that anytime we look at something other than price action, for example, a moving average. We look to the left and see if there's anything in alignment with it. And this 50 MA is aligned with these two pivot highs. So 41.35, looking to that, there's nothing below it. And you see here, there's this little congestion, but the bottom of this area right here, right? So it's an area. We can't look at this stuff as we look at a number. However, looking at things as an absolute, like fib lines and all of that, they're traps. So we look at an area. So if it comes down there and it touches what we call minor support, if it pokes down here a little bit, where does that put it in relation to price support, which we see there's a decent amount of price support here that occurred in the middle of the afternoon. We even could look at these 2 days as a wide range bar. Why? Because It ended on Thursday, and then it gapped up a little bit. There's no tail on the bottom of that bar on Friday, and it continued to go higher. So in essence, it was just a continuation of Thursday's move higher, wide bar. So ideally, it doesn't go, it could close below Friday's low. I'm not saying it will, but if it did that, it wouldn't be the worst thing. If we gets down to 4,000, that's going to be a real problem, because as we look at these together as one, it's moving down below the halfway point is when we look at any wide range bar. So as this, was still last week, if you go back and listen to recordings on YouTube, and we talk about this wide range bar and prices are still below, it's forming bottoming tail bars. Can it start to go into that? And we know a wide range bar is a void. So we've got those 2 days, and you see this move up. There's in reality, there's just no support underneath there of significance. So it's got to create support. We've got this little shelf here. You can see there on the 5 and the 15. Ideally, if it pulls back into that area, buyers are going to step up again. So what time is that? 12:30-ish. Going sideways. I want to look at SPY. Juice at 42.20. I saw that, and I'm not interested in it, McGraw. I mean, if my numbers are right, there's no-brainer juice down below at 40.15. And so we've got this move up, 40.15, 75 by 90 right now, 45.10, 60 by 75. So, there was, the premiums had jumped there. So now the bearishness comes back in, all well and good. So just under normal conditions is what we do. We look at historical patterns and historical reactions to patterns. Where's support, where's resistance? Unfortunately, there is no support. However, to come down there, who isn't thinking buy the dip at this point after last week? Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that seems like the no-brainer trade. Whereas if this hangs out here, I'm going to look at where the spiders are and the futures. But look, if this doesn't dip down into here, I mean, this could recover and just shoot right back up. Now, let's do this here. So we have a little bit of a topping tail there. It's early in the day, no big deal. 4,100 is the middle of Friday's bar, which is the wider bar. Ideally, it does stay above there. If it goes a little below it, no big deal. We just want to see at the end of the day, the open and close be above the 50% mark, the halfway mark, and that's all well and good. All right. But down here, and this futures, it doesn't relate to the exact same price. But let's look at SPX where that 20 is on there. The 20 is up there. We're down below the 20. So we've got 40.50. We've got the 20 MA. We're down below it. We're close to 4,000. If it went down there, yeah, everybody's going to be like, oh, what's going on here? Yada, yada. But there'll be buyers. So, what I call our lines of defense that'll protect us from a disaster. And we have that here. Whereas, going up here, that's like a bunt. I know it's kind of far, but in a bull market, this easily could go up there. Now, this is in a downtrend on the weekly, as you can see, and you got a wide range bar on the weekly, and kind of we're looking at where the middle of that bar is right there, 40.40-ish. It's still 40.15, 40.10 is still above the middle of the weekly bar. That, I think, is the safe trade, right? Versus this one, even though this one could certainly work. Right? All right, so it's 12 o'clock or so, and SPY here, middle. So ideally, it will hold this area if it pulls back. And look, sometimes they poke below and they poke back up again. We'll see what happens. 413, 412, 413. All right, so it already came down here to the bottom of the that base overnight, and it did a retest. So it's already retraced from an intraday, point of view, a relatively large amount, and it's at these pivots. It tested those pivots and it came back up again. Yeah, it was interesting to see what that does. Let's look at the futures. There's the retest, an obvious place to step up and buy there if you're so looking at it pre-market this morning. Not a big deal on the pullback. And so this shelf here, it's a pre-market. All right. So this was that little area we were looking at there on the S&Ps. So it's been jiggling down here. We got 28 seconds to go in this 15-minute bar. It's a wide range bar. It's a good on a retest. That would have been a good trade setup, or at least for a scalp down there, retesting that with those bottoming tail bars. From a daily perspective, no big deal. All right. So let's see if we get a little bit more of a correction going on here or not. And so the 50 MA is up here on the futures, obvious target area. Now the Dow, I want to look at that because that already reached the 50, but the 50 is in the middle of this bar. So we always look to the left to see, is it lined up? Is any moving average lined up with any real resistance? Because look, while institutions are all looking at that, it's still subjective because it's not based on price. So the price area is up there. It couldn't get there. Right? So it's a little selling early. Big wide range bar on the weekly. It's in a downtrend. At some point, it's going to turn down again. You got a huge top up there. Put everything in perspective. This showed some relative strength, working up here a little bit. Oh, so far, it just looks like today is going to be a correction day to some extent. One of the things that was questionable about the strength was the fact that Bitcoin wasn't participating at all. And remember, this morning it was below here and then it came back up again. And now there's buyers in Bitcoin. It's been holding that 30,000 area, which down below, it gets down below that. Obviously 20,000, and there isn't much support there. So definitely keep an eye on that. But this is a good start for the day for Bitcoin. I mentioned in the letter over the weekend that this looked like it was ready to start moving up. And XLE and some of these energy stocks, they just look like they can go climactic at this point. XLE could be on its way up to 100. So as far as crude oil goes, I don't know what resistance is there. I've only got the continuous contract. I was further back anyway. So like 120 was the prior, 129 or so was the prior high. So a little bit of inflation fear coming back, and now looking at interest rates. So part of the video discussion, which I did post on YouTube for those those of you that aren't subscribers, just as an example of what we go through on the weekends to explain what's happening in the markets and sectors. This rounding top here, one of my things I mentioned was to keep an eye on this. Does it start to flip back up again? So if oil's going up and we see these interest rates start moving up again, as we see they are, we do have a topping pattern. They did get extended. You can see the weekly chart. You want to keep an eye on this to see, do they roll back over? Do they come back up? If this is going up and crude oil's going up, and then just unrelated to the inflation thing, if you see the VIX start trending up during the day, you just know things are kind of in a corrective mode from last week's bullish move up. So keep an eye on those things. And we looked at that. Silver rolling over again, just no interest there. No, seems to be no interest, but until the dollar, and then the dollar pulling back to the 50, that's up a little bit. So dollar going up, interest rates going up, oil going up, everybody, whole inflation, fears again. You remember a year or so ago or 2 years ago? I mean, it was China or the pandemic, and you know that was like the focus, and things would correct, and then all of a sudden nobody cared, and then 2 days later everybody cared. So similarly, it's what is the market going to worry about now? It's always got to worry about something. Other than that, that's the short answer is it looks like a bit of a correction day, which is all well and good to consolidate Thursday, Friday's gain, and we'll see what shows relative strength and so on. Tony is saying, here we go, watch AMC, Acor, and Con. Well, I guess AMC could be doing well today, saying that new Tom movie doing great. I sold a lot of movies, people going back to the movie theaters. So that's a gap up. I certainly wouldn't be buying that unless it pulled back and so on. All right, Dan. Hope you had a great weekend.
Good morning. Yes, thank you. I'm still in the Keys, believe it or not.
Oh, all right.
Over broadcasting live, overlooking the Marathon Yacht Club. Beautiful view. So yeah, hope everybody enjoyed the long weekend. All right, so I'm glad to see this little gap down, because last night the futures were up 25. I'm like, all right, well, then it's just going to be a gap and crap day, whereas a continuation would be so much better. But we nailed this 3-day term. We had a really good week and all letters here. We rode the shorts, got out of them, rode the longs, and now it's harder. But despite that, we have a huge list of beautiful, some of these catch-up plays, some of them in sectors. I started getting us bullish in Bitcoin on Friday. Greg showed you Bitcoin, and Greg was, we said it's extended, but if it goes sideways and can't bounce, it has a void, but it wasn't going down. And so it broke out over the weekend here. There was the cover story on Barron's. I didn't read it. I mean, I started to. It was interviewing people, but it was the cover story on Bitcoin. And I said, oh, it'll be interesting to see the reaction of the Bitcoin stocks. But we got into a couple of them. We got into coin on Friday, both long stock, short puts. I'm short puts. So the whole Riot, Mara, Hut, Block, we shorted puts, a little bottoming pattern there. So we're doing good on those, and we'll look to add. Lost my pre-market here. Fur, Galing. Galing, yeah. It's I like Thursday, Fridays. I'd like it to go sideways a little bit more at these prior highs, but it looks good. NutX, little bottoming pattern, gap down. I have a couple other bottoming patterns here that I saw. We'll go through them here in a second. Charlie Delta, I like the weekly actually. I like this weekly, kind of the flavor of a bottoming pattern with inverse head and shoulders, target $10. Daily, I don't like up 3 bars at the 200 prior high, but it's worth watching. Delta 20 PAG. It's up 3 bars at a prior high, so not sure what your what type of trade. I do like the bear sandwich. I like the breakout on the monthly. So like all 4 of these, they're worth watching, but up 3 bars, I don't see any immediate action. Like JF, Netflix. Yep, Netflix is on our long watch and short put spread. Yep, kind of an inverse head and shoulders also, bottoming pattern, lower right shoulder, but again, it's not going down, and it has a big old void on the daily and weekly. So yeah, I like that. Troy, AMC, Acor. AMC, we're actually short. We're short a 10-8 put spread. So we got into that early. Had absolutely nothing to do with the speculation on Tom Cruise. It had to do with a bullish retest here on support. So we nailed the entry there on that 180 reversal. Is Acor a movie theater? I don't know what Acor is. Troy and Con. I don't see any pattern. Had a nice bounce, but it's a sell setup at the declining 20. Not crazy about that. Para is the Paramount, so they're the ones that I guess produce the movie. Gapping up a little bit, but AMC is actually a much bigger gap than this little thing. I guess it was priced in. I don't know if this was earnings or the news release on the movie, whatever, but that's had a big run off the lows. Thomas, we're in Citigroup. Not sure what your question is now, though. We'll just keep our stop. Another sector, Greg, and everyone else, help me keep an eye on this morning. Marijuana stocks and electric vehicles. I'm seeing a couple pop here. Look at Riven. Oh, and also Chinese stocks. Broader markets digest that last week's run. So look at little Riven here. Do you remember this thing went public and ridiculous valuations went up to 180 bucks? Look, this could be a home run long-term entry on this thing. So I like this little Raven. What are some others? Neo, gapping up there, but you got that prior high. XPEV, gapping up 2360. LI. I like that Raven the best. Tesla had a nice little 3-day bounce. I read something that Musk was tweeting that Gates is short like $1.5 billion of Tesla. I don't know. Google had positive mention and Barron's, but no pattern. So McGraw, you're good with Chinese stocks. JD here, 56.85. It's gapping over the 50 with a price void. Look at that. I really don't like the way it trades. Looks like it's an ADR, but that's a nice gap. Let's watch that on a pullback. I'll put him in the bottom right here. Mister's another Bitcoin stock that we've been selling puts on. Remember I said Thursday, I love that gap reversal. And we did a bang up job selling puts into this collapse. I love the weekly. So this I'm personally still short the 100 puts. They just sucked a lot of juice out and got spready, but let's keep an eye on that. Back to Chinese stocks, we actually sold a put spread on Baba on Thursday. So it's gapping up here. It has a void. I tightened the stop already to Friday's low with the gap up. We're still long a bull call debit spread on IWM. I tightened the stop under this pivot. Maybe we'll move it to 30-minute low. We're long on XLE. Wow, that's a powerful pre-market right there. Look at that. We got into this thing on Wednesday. The gap over, this continuation bar. Jan, wow. Wow, that thing's up here at $5. All right, I saw it moving this morning, but it's gone too much. Billy, another Chinese stock, 30-minute high is an idea. Here's another penny stock. Could come out of this range. Look how tight and flat those moving averages are. Wow. So 30-minute high, that's an idea. A Beaky 1254. Nah, I don't like it. So XLE we're in already. Kirk at earnings. This is what I would have called a potential bottoming pattern, but there's no something yet. And now with the gap down, I got no interest. All right, block we're in. BTF is another Bitcoin ETF. Look, gap in the 1227. Look, gap in here to the 20 MA with a price wood. So we started nibbling in the sector Friday because the charts told us to. All right, I got filled already. You know what that was? I got filled on my Mr. Puts at a nickel. All right, so this is gapping out of a long consolidation. 30-minute high on this I like too. So I'm gonna need some help from you all today because I'm just on my laptop here today till I get home this afternoon. But if somebody wants to watch this 30-minute high, I like. Para. Oh, that's the movie, man. Husa, another gap breakout, but that's a bigger percent gap, but on a pullback, let's watch. Unilever, there was some news about an activist hedge fund guy getting on the board. The gap's too big. All right, these are now just leftover scans from the weekend. Adobe's had a nice run, but put spread on a pullback. Ring's been beat up. Look at this. Look at this. Ring 450